Let's get started. So it is November 17th at exactly 5:30. Perfect. So I'd like to call the November meeting for the Measure J Oversight Commission to order. Commissioner Craig, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fabulous. Oh, I think I might have skipped things again, but can we have a call, or no, can we have a roll call? Evelyn, please.
Commissioner Craig?
Here.
Commissioner Gassan? Present. Commissioner Puder?
Present.
Commissioner Marshall?
Here.
Commissioner Bernstein?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robin?
Yes, here.
Chairperson Soto?
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. Well, we have accept the agenda. So the Measure J Commission will discuss the order of the agenda and may amend the order, add items, and may remove items from the agenda for discussion. We need a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein.
I'll second.
Thanks, Commissioner Kazan. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the agenda, acceptance of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Fantastic. Any nays, abstentions? I think that was everybody. Perfect. Great. So next we have public comment. This time has been aside for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items. Do we have anybody in the waiting room or anything, Evelyn?
We do. It's done, but we have no public comments today.
Okay. Well, I'll just read the quick public comment just so it's for the record. So we do set aside time for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. And we give 3 minutes for each speaker. So, okay, well, that being said, the next item on our agenda then is chair comments. Just so we have it at the top of the meeting and not at the end. Can we think I'm going to ask a question to Evelyn and maybe I'll do it at the end actually. So in general, I don't have any other updates that are not in the agenda. I did reach out to Amy Blasdell, so I'm looking forward to the communications update and discussion that we have and a few other staff updates on things that we discussed last month. So I'm looking forward to kind of bringing that back. So that moves us to new business. So can we get a budget update? Nancy?
Absolutely. Good evening.
Lovely, by the way, your background.
Oh, my background?
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. I'm working from home. Thank you. I went ahead and revised the Measure J approved community initiated projects. Thank you for bringing it to my attention about the Mizell Center. So with that, it increased your available balance to $1.3 million. Any questions on that? Okay, so going right to the summary of Measure J funds, the year-to-date revenue comparison through October 31st, 2.9 million compared to 3.4 million last year. So we're about 485,000 under where we were in the prior year. We're hoping that this trend will start going up a little bit. We don't know where it's going. So that's all I have for on the update. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Yeah, I have a question.
Can you tell us why you think it went down?
We noticed, especially when I start looking at all the revenues, they're starting to trend downward because it's starting to go back to pre-COVID numbers. In addition to, everybody knows there's a recession coming. But when we look at our TOT numbers, we see a decrease going also with the TOT numbers going down.
This is through really August. This is through what month? Collected figures, August?
We're 2 months behind.
So if I can just comment, I will tell, knowing from the hospitality and the sales, that the summer months, July, August, and September, were all pre-COVID, but they're mostly thinking that October and November are above and first quarter. So I think this is something that everybody is seeing, even with the recession, that they're expecting a strong first quarter, at least.
So we won't, if we're 2 months behind, we won't see that until December, really January, right?
Yeah,
right.
The next month you'll see is September, which was also down for a lot of people.
I think Commissioner Marshall, I think you had a question.
It got answered. I wanted to know why the trend.
Great. Any other questions or comments about the budget? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, as always. So that moves us to the capital improvements project. We were going to discuss again the playground equipment shade structures. Joel, I think that's you, right?
Yeah, good evening. So I did bring this back. I took it off the agenda last time because I was a little bit confused about, the money and the parks themselves and what was part of Measure J, what wasn't. So I wanted to kind of relook at it again. Essentially I confused myself when I was trying to look up things during the meeting. So really just to repeat, and the request still stands from last meeting. Let me just start with, we have 3 projects, 2 of which have CDBG funding, and one of which was a community initiated project of $58,000. So the 2 projects that were not part of the community initiated projects and essentially weren't part originally of Measure J were Demuth Park and Barista Park. And essentially it's to put shade structures on these playgrounds. So the request, and I think I explained it last time, that budgets are I guess increasing. All our projects are really expensive now, and in order to deliver these projects, I come before the Measure J to request funding. The one project that is part of Measure J was community initiated, was a Victoria Park project, and I'm really requesting $416,670,000 for. The other 2 were not originally part of Measure J, but it is basically the same thing. It's putting playground shade structures on playground equipment, and I was asking the commission to see if they would fund or give me additional funding to be able to put those projects out together. So essentially, that's the staff report, and I'm available for questions.
A question. Why are they so expensive? I mean, it seems like $500,000 you could build a house.
It is. It's really the structures themselves, really the foundations, because they're wind sails, right? Essentially, if the wind hits them, they take them away. So construction of the footings, the steel, all that is really expensive, and because they span a big footprint, so they are fairly expensive because of the nature of the footprint and the construction.
And I have a question, but Commissioner Robin, I saw your hand first. You go.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Related to the shade structure itself and the sail shades, is there only a single design applied to each of these locations? In other words, would the footprint change the preferred method, or is there only one method? So where I'm going with this question involves thoughts of are there opportunities that make sense to include solar panels given the immense square footage, which is effectively a building roof?
Right. In order to do something like that, we would have to completely rethink what we're doing, right? Essentially, when you go to a park and you see shade structures, they follow one format for the most part, or there's gazebos, big type gazebos that get constructed, and that's generally where the people are eating and doing other things, but not necessarily above playground structures. So we as engineering have not really stopped to think about other types of structures that could be constructed over playground equipment. We're simply taking what is typically done in most cities, and for the most part in our city as well, using that particular design to just put shade over the playground equipment. If you're looking at solar panels, you're looking at electrical infrastructure in the middle of a park. Whatever project you might think might happen would the cost would grow exponentially. So we really didn't think of it in those terms.
And do you, related to that, do you know whether the CV Link shade structures that have just gone up, if those are applicable to a park, a playground, and if those CV Link shade structures also include solar installations?
I guess I can't really talk to the CV Link solar aspect of it. I've gone and looked at it, but I saw the one that was being installed at the visitor center. I couldn't tell if there were solar panels on top or not, or I don't recall if there were or not.
Yeah, I couldn't. They're so new. I couldn't even tell if they're done yet.
That structure is a really beefy structure, and it's not really spanning any real distance to have things underneath it, right? It's a smaller one. It's almost like a parking garage or a parking structure, really small. These are unique because we need to span big distances, right? And we're really spanning them with something that's very light. So if right now, say the 400,000 for a shade structure for the playground shade equipment, if we put anything solid on top of it, all the footings, everything will exponentially grow, and the cost will be extreme.
Good point.
So we're just sort of not stuck, but I think this is the best method to provide shade over playground equipment.
What's the longevity of these?
Well, one of the things we found is that these structures are lasting quite a bit, and we've stuck with the same manufacturer. What I was told from our facilities and maintenance department, that when you use lesser quality materials, they last 5-10 years, and everything's I think it's even less, they start ripping apart. We've had some at the dog park, I think, that even more, like 10 years, and they're still holding up pretty well. So I think, and I can't tell you exactly, but I think we're looking at 10 to 20 years before we have to replace the wind sail or the shade portion of it.
10 years?
10 to 20 years, but I right now I don't have the technical data in front of me to be able to tell you that that's what it is.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Commissioner Gazan was up first.
And Joel, I mean, is it possible too that we look at other cities, ask Palm Desert?
Well, I did actually. I took a lot of the quotes from La Quinta. La Quinta just put shade structures on playground equipment in my neighborhood. So I know Brian McKinney from the Public Works Director for the city of La Quinta. I've looked at Palm Desert structures, and I think Palm Desert structures are a little bit bigger, but they were incorporated and designed with the park. So yeah, it's very common to do what we're doing. It's just the cost is extremely high. And we can find the square footages, maybe bring it down a little bit, but the goal is to cover playground equipment, right? If we're not doing that, then we're not achieving anything. I think I'm just presenting you with what I have in front of me, what the facts are. I'm not defending it. I'm just really saying this is what the cost is, right? One of the things that I wanted to do was actually put out a project so that we could have multiple contractors bidding on it and designers, so that there's a competition instead of going with the government, which is, to be honest, it's the most ideal contract we have because their equipment is very solid. But we're going to try to duplicate that spec, if you will, specification, and try to put it out in the streets to see if we can obtain other contractors that might bid this project. And then we're going to learn, we may find out that it's going to be more expensive, and we'll have to reject those as well. So it's just a process.
Joel, I have a question and a comment, I guess. So for Victoria Park, that did come to us as a community initiated project, is way higher than what we were anticipating. If we were to go forward with the full amount, which is still would need to be determined, that would just be a regular Measure J project, right? Not then out of our community initiated project.
Well, technically, it's a community-initiated project. The park is, and that 400,000 that I need is, and I guess you can define it however you want, but it is a project that was requested by the community.
Yeah. So I guess I pose this to the full commission, right? Like we would have to determine if we want to keep it as a community-initiated project or, you know, have it come out of the other one. And just one other comment I will say about the need for it, like not for it to fully cover the playgrounds, as Joel mentioned, like literally 4 days after last month's meeting, my daughter burned herself on the slide at Sunrise Park on like a completely like 72-degree beautiful day, because it's not this, and those are newer shades, but it doesn't completely cover the playground. And she's like terrified of slides right now. So it is just like such a very real thing for families that are using these playgrounds. So one anecdote is not data, but I just wanted to share that. Commissioner Bernstein.
So I know we did discuss this last time, and Commissioner Kazan rightly said, like, we just need to get some things done that we know we want done. And I know, and if Joel is going to bid it out, what I would just say to, you know, we have money that is in community project that's unallocated for parks. And I would just say, you know, this is what we're recommending, and talk to I know the parks person's not quite ready, but they had another 18 projects that will not get funded. And that may be better because this one is already ready to go, but it would be helpful if they could weigh in and see. And I know, again, I know this is really important. And one anecdote is there's probably 1,000 kids out there that had the same problem. So, but I know there's a lot of other issues in our parks that need to be done. So I would just say, while it's being put out to bid, is if we can make sure the Parks and Rec Commissioner, not Commissioner, Parks and Rec's director, weighs in to understand that out of those 18 projects, this will now take a big chunk out of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to add to a little, bringing back to Commissioner Bryan's comment around like rethinking some of these things, council did say that they want to have like what was it, a parks master plan, right? And so there are other aspects where we should be, you know, as commissioners, but also just residents, like be participating in that, because those projects or those ideas are going to come back to Measure J anyway. So just something to consider, that, you know, these 3 shade structures is definitely not the end of kind of major park investments.
Right. One thing I did sorry, I wanted to point out that this is one of the community initiated projects that we vetted. We went and looked, and the price was ballooned from the request. I want the commission to keep in mind that as we vet the other projects, I think the same thing is going to happen. So when we start talking about additional funds available to allocate to other projects, we really need to keep in mind we haven't gone through the list of projects we have, and the money may be needed for those projects as we start working towards them. So just something to keep in mind. I wanted to bring it up because this is just an example of what we're going to have to go through with the other projects.
Robin? Sure.
Thanks. Just to add on, and largely to add on to my comments from the prior meeting, I don't have heartburn over the project as a concept. What my concern is, first, with the cost. This is no longer a community project. This is a standard Measure J project that should be part and parcel of the parks list of projects that they're endorsing and asking for funding from. However, second point, I don't think that my position on that, I don't think that interferes with what I would support is, yes, go forward with pricing this out, evaluating the project as a legitimate project that we can fund, but recognizing in the context of the whole, we've now exceeded the expectation of what community funds would go to, at what level. And then secondly, on this, as Joel just pointed out, there are a lot of unseen costs that we haven't encountered yet. So we shouldn't be relying completely on the good news in our available funds basket, because that will change a lot.
I had one last thing. I'm sorry to belabor this, but Commissioner Gazan and I, when we went through the roadmap in the past, the process was typically that we would spend the year going through the projects for the 23-24 budget and make recommendations before it's approved. And the way it looks from the timeline, which I know we're not there, we're not even going to start that until March and then present it and vote on it in April. And it seems to me that if we're presenting the whole measure, if the commission is going to make recommendations for all of the Measure J budget, including something like the park, that we have to look at all of the projects, including the year 2 of the 5-year capital plan, which we haven't really reviewed as a commission along with this. Is that, I mean, Jim, isn't that your understanding how we normally, the commission was set up to do things, was to look at all the 23-24 recommendations throughout the year?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we would be starting to look at that soon, usually by January. And then it's the list that comes from the city, basically from the planning department. And yeah, we're spending a lot on community projects and that discussion. And I know that this kind of initiated from that. So I don't know, I'm conflicted with this one because I feel like we just need to move forward and do something, and our parks need the attention, and it's like, let's just do it. Parks have not come to our meeting. They've not addressed that laundry list of wants on the community application. So I think it's important. This is not a whimsical ask, but I do agree with your point, Jeffrey, that yeah, this if we're dipping into regular Measure J funds to cover the cost of this, it should be part of the bigger picture of what we're looking at for Measure J funds that are presented to us that meet what we have to spend basically for the following fiscal year. And I guess with this, I would be willing to make, I don't know, I mean, I feel like we're kind of halfway down the road on this already because it came out of community. So do we just dip into regular Measure J funds and just do it? And part of me is like, let's just do this. It's something that's recognizable. It's good PR for Measure J. It's a needed amenity and in addition to our parks that I think we need. We're really behind compared to the rest of the valley when it comes to our parks. So
I make a motion that we move to approve pending having additional bids.
I second that.
Okay.
Understanding, and Joel, just to understand that when we when the commission presents the 23-24 budget, if this could affect those recommendations of things that you're already expecting to be approved, if we start going over on a lot of other things. So
no, that's absolutely understood. It applies to the community initiated projects, right? If we go and start vetting 2 or 3 of them and it eats up the entire budget, then that's it. You only have 2 or 3 projects. It goes the same for the regular Measure J funding, right? If we exhaust it with 3 or 4 projects, and I've shown time and again that we are unable to really accurately predict what the costs are because they're variable. They're so, right now, inflation is just eating up all our budgets, right? So I completely understand that you know, and we move forward, right? We do what we can with the money available.
And the other thing I would just know is, I think it was last month or maybe the other month, you presented like the priorities, right? So we're working on this list in the like order of importance, right? So if we do expend our budget for community initiated projects, like the engineering team is going through it in the order that it makes the most sense.
Right. Right now, we're making a lot of advances on the other ones, right? We're looking at the pool. The pool, there was a community initiated project for the pool equipment, for upgrading of the pool area, and there's lots of wants and needs in the pool itself. So we're doing a lot of background work. So I'm not just bringing this project right now because this is the only one we're working on. My staff is working on almost all of them, trying to figure out how to best bring them forward, how to combine them. So there's lots of work in the background. So if you see in 2, 3, 4 months that we haven't done anything. We have been doing it from day one, and we've assigned these projects to people, and we're looking at them, right? So the next one I'll probably bring forward is that pool with a lot of needs and wants there. So just keep in mind we are working in the background on all of them.
So one of the things
I'll add to just looking in the rearview mirror with community projects. This could be like hotspots, where our list of projects, and Joelle puts it correctly, they become more expensive. We keep moving on with time and economy and everything else. And hotspots was supposed to be a 1 year, it turned into 2 years, it turned into 3 years. And I've always known that this list that we had from this past year would probably become a multiple year list of community projects. And that's a good thing. We maybe don't have to go back to the community right away and open up, to everyone, and that, we fulfill the list that we have. They're all great, important projects, and we chunk through them. And then once we get through them, if it takes 2 years, then we move on and we can open it back up.
I think we have a motion.
Back to our motion.
Can I call for the vote?
Roll call vote.
Yes, please.
And the motion was to approve pending additional bids.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Craig,
Yes.
Commissioner Gassan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuder,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernstein,
yes.
Vice Chairperson Robin,
No.
Chairperson Soto.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
So one of the other things, just to mention briefly, when we used to have it, we would have the list of all of those projects with an ongoing update. So, and I know because you just said you're working on all the stuff in the background, even if it's just like we're still working on it or still developing, that way when we're making these decisions, we can see the big picture on everything.
Right, and I think together with finance, we're working on bringing to you basically what's it called, the true up. So we are doing that, and you'll see that, and we can bring that forward. So I think Chris and Nancy are working hard to bring that forward to you, so you see all the
we've recently had some vacancies in our department, and once we went on the new EnerGov system, it's wonderful where it has project codes. But if you're not fully trained, so some of the project codes are in the project code section, but not in the budget. So we're almost done reconciling Measure J, and we hopefully might have something at the next meeting for you. And list out all the projects from last year and this year, and what is the available funding on those.
Right, and a little bit of the delay is because before what you would see is a manually inputted spreadsheet. We're trying to rely on our new system to bring forward that, so it's very easy to print, very easy to duplicate, to manipulate, to provide more data to the commission. So I think that's sort of why we're delaying a little bit, but we'll get you the information.
And one of the, Evelyn and I were talking last week, I believe it was. So for this coming year, 23-24 community projects of $1 million, we're not going to go out and ask for any more applications, are we?
You mean for community projects?
Yes.
I wouldn't think so. If our list is going to take.
Yeah,
we haven't acted on that.
Because we know, I think we sent it out last year in November. I don't know. When did we send that out, Evelyn?
The deadline was December 2nd.
Yeah, so as long as we're not sending out a list, that's all we needed to know.
So what I would recommend is that there was a number of projects, including the parks projects, and also some that we asked Arts about that we were waiting to hear back, and that maybe we look at those again, because we will have another $1 million. I know one that has been brought up to me a couple of times was the charging stations for the electric bikes that the chamber wanted. And because it had an arts element, we wanted to see if the arts wanted to pay half, and as it turns out, they don't even want to consider it, even though they have money. And so the Chamber of Commerce has asked again whether we would consider that at this point. So I don't know the answer. I didn't speak to it. I don't have it, but I think it was $15,000 for electric bike charging station down at the chamber.
That should come from a grant. We have a new sustainability director. Let me talk to her because we might be able to use sustainability funds and or obtain a grant for that.
Okay, you might check soon because it's gonna, otherwise city council is gonna put it on the next agenda.
I would say we have plenty of work in community initiated projects for a bit. Okay, that brings us to our discussion item 3A.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a quick question? Clarification. When are we going to hear from Parks and Recreation?
Evelyn, I believe last they said they were still, the question was where are we on the Parks and Rec conversation for them to present? I believe their committees they had newly established like ad hoc committees to kind of decide that some of these prioritizations needs, and I don't believe they're ready yet, right, Evelyn?
That's right. They did say that they had established the ad hoc committees, but they were not yet ready to meet. I followed up with them, but I haven't heard back as to whether those meetings have occurred or not. So we'll keep you posted.
Have they seen this list of 18 and the budget? So they know. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Would be great to get them the latest January, at latest, but okay. Any other question? We move on to the roadmap, item 3A. Yes,
would you mind if Evelyn shared her screen so we all could go through it?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and open the Word version. Okay, do you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so last month we had agreed on the calendar. I don't think there's been any changes on the calendar, right, Evelyn, since last month?
The December 2022 meeting, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main thing we wanted to just briefly bring back, we did have a discussion last month on like the policy review at the top, and that there were several items that we either wanted to update, confirm, or add. Nancy, do you want me to go through it, or do you kind of want to, or how do you want to split this?
You could go ahead and go through it, and then we can answer any questions that you have.
Okay, so I brought 3 items to Nancy and Evelyn based off of our conversation last month to ask for clarification. So the first one was item 2, which was the $1 million contingency, and just confirming that we are going to have that both in the budget and included in our budget. And Nancy confirmed that, right? No other changes there.
Good. Yeah, so I think if I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and look again. I thought the 1 million is a contingency, but that's basically just for the community projects and not an additional $1 million. But I'm going to have to do some research because of our new financials. Nothing sticks out like really easily. So we're going to keep looking at that. But I think it was just for the community projects.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't understand why we would need item 2 and 3.
Well, what did where did
and then it's not a contingency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding they were separate. And then the other one was item 3, which was if/when the budget for the community initiative project was going to get increased, as council had seemed to support last June.
So I did talk to the interim city manager, and when we go ahead and look at the summary of Measure J, if you note that in 23-24, if we're going to go with exactly the projects that Joel has in his 5-year capital project, we're already $2 million in the hole, negative fund balance. So unless projects get moved around, or the new council wants to rearrange the projects in the 5-year capital project to give you more money, we won't know that until we have a meeting with the council.
Well, if I could just reiterate that the format, Measure J hasn't made any recommendations on the 23-24 and hasn't really reviewed it yet, although we saw the initial draft. So I would suggest that we include that earlier so that it's being reviewed by Measure J in advance of March.
How about January? I don't know if Joel, I'm not going to speak for Joel. Joel, when is the soonest you think we can bring it to the Measure J Commission?
So, as the Commissioner Bernstein stated, that we have what our CIP is for next year, or at least what we think, but the commission hasn't reviewed it, hasn't approved the project, hasn't removed the project. So it is the CIP for next year is pretty much established. Essentially, there might be more projects that we bring forward, but it's sort of ready to look at and discuss for next fiscal year, right? Year 2 of what I presented as a 5-year CIP. And then it develops over time until we get to the point where the commission is meeting with the council. But so I guess I don't know how to answer that question other than it is set right now with all the projects we projected for next year, continuing appropriations, continuing projects. So the commission just needs to review those and agree or disagree with what we're recommending.
So I guess we could, since it's ready, we can do it in our January meeting. Will that work?
As a first attempt at looking at the projects, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused as to, like, if these policies are supposed to help us guide our conversations throughout the year, if the current council said that the community initiated project budget doesn't seem like an appropriate ongoing allocation, recognizing that that might change depending on how the year ends, but this is supposed to be like our guiding document. And so if it's supposed to be based off of a percentage or an increased set amount, and that changes in March, like, okay, but the goal here is we're not reviewing and updating this every fall. And that this is a timeline and allocations that we can consider. For number 5, when we say $6 million to roads, like, our budget is assuming that $6 million stays. And so we make modifications on other projects based off of that. And I thought my impression was that council wanted that community initiated projects for there to be more discretion and a bigger allocation there. So it just seems contradictory to what was discussed last June.
But they never gave us specific direction. So I can't just pick a number, but I think we can, when we regroup in January, we can go through all the projects that Joel has, and maybe there's some that could be moved around.
Okay.
If I can jump in, I think that the point of relevance is that the $1 million number should have the capacity to change over time, to go up over time. And secondly, if the bottom line availability is squeezed because of forward commitments to projects from prior years carrying over, and it appears that the planned budget year has a shortfall, then we need to reevaluate. But as Chairwoman said, as a planning document, the planning document is dictating that we have these parameters that include a bracket around $1 million for community funds.
And I don't think, Evelyn, I'm not sure. I thought I saw a resolution that states that it's $1 million. Do you recall that?
Yes. So if the thing is, since council did discuss this, but there hasn't been a staff report, there hasn't been an approval for the $3 million. It's not really effective. They talked about it, but there is no resolution approving that. But there is a formal resolution for the 1 million.
Yeah, but this doesn't prevent us from in a subsequent budget year of asking for more than $1 million, and to ask for to codify it.
That's right.
To codify it.
yeah, I guess we'll formalize that ASAP next time they discuss it. Okay, and then the last one was the number 6, I think was what we had reviewed. Evelyn, did you want to discuss that around the timeline for presenting? So there was a question around last month of whether or not we could consider community projects outside of our normal timeline. Like if a project were to come up, could we make a recommendation to council prior to May? So I asked Evelyn and Nancy to see like if there was anything in place that would prevent us or allow, if there was any parameters in general around doing community initiated project recommendations outside of the typical timeline in the same way that we are able to do for capital projects.
Nancy, do you want to explain or did you want me to?
Well, I mean, we could meet and discuss next year's community projects at any time before we bring it to council. If you have a project that next week the pool needs a whole new filter or something that's going to cost some money and they come to you, Joelle or I will need to take a staff report to council requesting that we use a community initiated project and what amount it's for, if you all agree. Does that make sense or help? You can't spend next year's money until it's actually approved by budget. But you could spend your contingency that you have left right now with the 1.3 million.
Right. So if there are funds available and it seems urgent and pressing, we could have the discretion to be able to make a recommendation.
Absolutely. And then we just take it to a regular council meeting and have them approve it.
Great. Any questions around that? Does everyone seem clear? Great. Okay. So that was everything around the roadmap that I wanted to just update you all on. If there's no other question, we can move to 3B, which was, no, that includes 3B, right, Nancy? Was there anything else you had to say?
No, I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement that we're going to bring the capital project, Joelle's 5-year, to the January meeting.
That would be great.
Can I also
add better, love it.
We take the community projects and just give a status of all the ones that we approved last time, a status update. And some of them I know, like the Mizell has already been handed out. I'm not sure about the other items, as well as the ones for this year. Like I think there was cultural center money and other things, and I'm not sure where any of that is. Part of the true up.
That could be the part of true up. I think it last commission meeting, I thought I had in the memo, and right now it's kind of blurring because it was a month ago. I had an update on the money that was already given out, and I thought that was part of that memo. But we can bring it back in the true up and just give you an update on all of them.
I think that would be helpful.
It's sort of helpful to have even if it's changes little, the full update each time. And that way we always know, we can sort of see where we're at, or if there is any changes and with both the community and the regular Measure J.
I think on our access level, I think that's helpful too, somewhere to open up our agenda to try to understand what projects have been approved in what bucket. So, okay, great. Moving us along, that moves us to communications. So I did have a quick email exchange with Amy Blasdale, and there was, I think today or maybe yesterday, there was a post about the Demuth Measure J bathrooms, which look lovely, and I saw a lot of appreciation for on social media. I asked her what would be the most appropriate way to kind of give ongoing, opportunities of Measure J promotion. And she seemed pretty on board of having like a liaison of someone who could send updates to her, given that Nancy and Evelyn and Joel have tons on their plate. So I wanted to see if there was, if you all were interested in having kind of like a liaison to the communications team at the city. And if that way, kind of at the end of every meeting, we can agree like, hey, these are the 1 or 2 things that would be great to see promoted in the next month. And then that person can just send those to her. But I'd open up to discussion if that seems appropriate, if that seems enough for right now, or if there's anything else you'd like to see.
I can certainly and gladly do the liaison messenger work. Doesn't sound like heavy lifting.
And what is this liaison going to do again? I'm sorry.
Just reach out to Amy on the things that have been completed. So like the Mizell groundbreaking would have been one to send like a quick heads up, this is happening. Or when we got that really nice letter from the school district, kind of forwarding that on about, a Measure J project. So just kind of those, if there's upcoming events that we're invited to as Measure J commissioners, especially as community initiated projects moves on board, or other things, but just kind of flagging those for her attention. Commissioner Craig.
I think since we've talked in the past about we need more PR in the standpoint of the public knowing what Measure J is doing, I think it's a great idea. And I don't know if it calls for a motion, but I would just say I hope we unanimously support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do we need a motion? It seems like.
No, I don't think we need a motion for that.
No.
We do have in our budget, and I don't follow the advertisements, but I thought they already listed for a new communications manager or director that they're waiting to get on board.
I know that there was a job description and applications in, but I haven't heard anything after that too. So hopefully as the capacity of that team expands too, there'll be more opportunities for promotion. So, well, Commissioner Robin, that would be great. Yes.
On the promotion, I also think is making sure that it's physically at the location for the physical items. I know the Mizell still hasn't even started their actual renovation, but if the bathrooms in Demuth are finished, it would be helpful if there was a plaque or whatever it is that says this is funded by Measure J, and that we have those as many places as possible.
And Joel, didn't we have the medallions?
I did see something posted on Facebook today regarding restrooms.
Yeah, that's the Demuth ones, but I meant physically at the restroom site.
Right.
I mean, the issue really is long-term people understanding that there's this Measure J tax that eventually is going to come back up for consideration. And the more people are reminded over the years, the more likely they understand what it's for.
And we have done that before. We did it at Mountain Gate area there for the community center. We have a plaque there for Measure J when we did the stage years ago.
We procured that concrete stamp, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you did have the concrete stamp. We had it, and I think I need to check with Don. I think we might have misplaced it, so we need to look for that stamp. Yeah. One of the things that I did want to say is we have 2 project manager positions, engineering project manager positions that we're trying to hire out. So what that's going to do is going to start alleviating some of the pressure that the current staff have, and try to expand to make sure we follow up with things like that. I know some of that does fall on engineering to try to get it done right. We try to advertise, we try to put signs up, we try to, the last paving project, we had the little A-frame. So we try, sometimes we do fall short because, once this meeting's over, we start working on other projects and we try to incorporate it into the projects. And I keep on saying we do, but we do get overwhelmed with other things. So as our staff expands as well, we're committed to try to get the word out and work with our communications team and everyone to try to get that. We do have to look for that stamp. If not, we have to buy it, and the city will try to get one so that we keep on stamping and making sure that we put those in the projects.
So maybe on a short-term basis, we can be excited by the increased social media promotion with the liaison, and then we just the physical promotion or physical branding is probably something that will be more possible once you have your team a little bit more staffed up. Like,
yeah, I don't like making excuses, but sometimes things do fall through the cracks.
I think it's helpful to be like, this is something we can add on in March, right? Or whenever you can tell us what that timeline is, but it gives us something to then go back to when you're ready. So
Pump Canyon, we're doing a project right now. There's a big sign. It has a big old Measure J sign on there, right? So we do try to put it out there. And
that's great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last thing on the agenda is, or the last discussion item is the December meeting. Evelyn, did you want to chat about that?
So the December 15th meeting is our regular meeting, but the council meets on that date. So we need to determine if we need to have a special meeting or just cancel the December meeting and meet in January. Is there a need for a December meeting is what we need to decide.
I would vote for January if we're guaranteed what we discussed tonight and have a project list that we can start to overview what funds we have available for the project list and a true up.
And I think I don't know if Evelyn completed it or we'll have it for the next meeting, but what we thought we would do is bring our list back of the ones we said yes to and the ones we said no to and put them side by side. And maybe there's something small in there that we might want to say, oh, if we have to go back to council for anything, we might as well try to do as much as we can at one time. So if we see something on the list that might be 10,000 or 7,000 or 5,000, then we can maybe go through that list again and say, okay, what are our next priorities on this list? What do we want to do?
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Footer.
Yeah, I want to ask Joelle about the visitor center light up. That's a small ticket number, and that's lit up during modernism. So how much do you have to do to make that do what they want to do with it?
Before we get to that, in Commissioner comments and questions, can we just decide on the December-January meeting? So it seemed like was everyone okay with skipping the December meeting and then just having a very robust, productive one in January? Okay, great.
Aye.
Aye. Do we need a motion? I think we're good. Yeah. Okay. So that brings us to Commissioner members' comments and questions, and Commissioner Footer started us off. Joel, did you have any?
So the person that submitted the request for the community initiated projects has already made contact, and I believe we provided them the agreement to sign. They're going to get the quotes, and they're moving forward with doing that project. So it's one of the small ones, and they're asking for the funding, and they're gonna make it happen.
But how do they make it happen for modernism?
It's external, so they just bring in the lights, they put them where they belong, and then they connect them. This is going to be a more permanent.
So they want it to be a permanent. Okay, good.
Correct.
That's a very small one, and for me personally, I think a really beautiful one.
Yeah, I think it's moving forward right now.
Okay, great. I haven't talked to Mr. Maruzzi or whoever. I haven't talked to
Peter Maruzzi was the one that asked for it. We've sent them the agreement, and he's working towards.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No. Well, we're finished a little early, which is fantastic. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:23. I'll see you January 19th.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays, Jerry.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.